There's a lot to love about living in Burlingame, but it's not for everyone. I'm going to share with you 7 things to consider before making a move to Burlingame. Burlingame's an expensive place to live, so we'll talk about housing prices in a second, but when you think about food costs, going to restaurants, it's hard to get away at less than $20 or $30 per person unless you're going to grab a burrito. Childcare is expensive. Just going to the grocery store is pricey. So when we think about all these things as it relates to housing cost, and we compare it to the rest of the Bay Area and California median price in the last year was $822,000. And when we look at the 9 counties in the Bay Area, the median home price in the last year was $1,225,000. So it's really expensive just buying real estate around here, but also living here. So as you can imagine, Burlingame is a super expensive place to live. Who's actually buying homes in Burlingame though? In 2021, the median household income was over $140,000. And when you compare that to a national perspective, making 6 figures is a huge dollar amount. It's really insane. But when you think about what does it take to buy a home in Burlingame, you typically need to be making income of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 or significantly more. Sure, you could buy a 1-bedroom condo if your income is that, but most people are looking for something a little bit larger than that. So there's 4 main industries that people who buy homes in Burlingame are working in. Of course, there's high tech. So we have headquarters here for all the big companies you can think of. Google, Facebook, Apple, you name it, we have it. Salesforce. We have a whole ecosystem of smaller companies too. And then of course there's biotech. So in South San Francisco, we have hundreds of small biotech companies, plus there's Genentech, and we also have Gilead, not to mention a bunch of others. We also have healthcare. So we have Stanford, we have UCSF, we have Sutter Health, so we have these big ecosystems there. Lastly, there's finance. We have major finance companies who are headquartered here too, with some that have crossover into the tech space. So let's talk about pricing. So in Burlingame, the median home price over the last year was $2.7 million, and the average price was $2.8 million. So nice to see that they're very similar. As I mentioned before, Burlingame is the 6th most expensive city for pricing in San Mateo County, but really when you look in the North Peninsula, it's number 2 behind Hillsborough. More south of Redwood City, I wouldn't really call the North Peninsula, which would be Atherton, Portola Valley, Menlo Park. The other thing about buying a home around here is it's gonna be an older house. Yes, can you buy new construction for $5 or $6 million? Absolutely. Can you buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that's completely remodeled in the mid-2s to low 3s? Absolutely. But most homes in Burlingame are gonna be older. I grew up in a home that was built in 1911 in Burlingame. It's still there. Single pane windows, but that's not what everyone wants, right? If you want something that's a little bit newer, you're still most likely to have like the original foundation. Maybe the home has had some voluntary seismic upgrades, but it's not like you go spend $3, $4, $5 million and you're necessarily getting something that's in mint condition. A lot of the older homes in Burlingame, you're likely to encounter some type of issues, whether it's drainage, which unfortunately we see a lot of because basically when it rains, water goes from the top of 280 all the way down to the bay, and wherever you are, no matter how expensive your home is, there's just the water that you have to consider. Not saying it's a problem, but just something to be aware of. And then the other thing I see a lot of around here in my transactions are issues with termites. So drywood termites, subterranean termites, there could be fungus damage. We see this frequently. One home that we bought in Burlingame a number of years ago, we had to remove the whole outside of the house, the stucco. Now we did know that there were a lot of issues going into it, but that was certainly a headache that we wish we could have avoided, but it's okay. Life happens. The other thing to think about in Burlingame when you're spending the big dollars is the lot size. So these are not palatial lots of land. Most homes in Burlingame are in lot sizes of 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. Now we do have about 10% of the homes that are in substantially larger lots, but if you want something that's 7,500 square feet or more, you can expect to pay a substantial premium. It's not something that you can definitely get though. So if you're looking up in the hills, you're more likely to get a larger lot up there. But if you want a larger lot in a flat location, you're gonna pay a significant premium for that. And by significant premium, you could need to spend in the $6 million plus range just to get an oversized lot. Now, if you're interested in buying a condo in Burlingame, you should know that there's not a lot of new construction because many people, if they're spending $1 million or $1.5 million on a condo, they do want something that's pretty new. So most condos in Burlingame though are gonna be like 25 to 40 years old. We just don't have a really robust supply of condos in Burlingame, and the ones that we do have, they're just on the older side. Now, you might not be surprised to learn that the Bay Area had the highest construction cost of anywhere in the world in 2019, and in 2021, we're number 3 behind Hong Kong and Tokyo, and this is per hour when you factor in wages, when you factor in overhead, construction materials altogether. In fact, in 2021, the average wage for a construction worker in the Bay Area was $105 per person per hour. And then you think about, well, housing costs, even when you're getting paid that much, like it's just so expensive to live around here. So we do see people who commute in even from the East Bay, who work in the trades who on the peninsula. And we do see that, like it's even hard to staff restaurants sometimes, even with the minimum wage being where it is, because it's just so expensive to live around here. And this is not unique to Burlingame. This is something that we see across the board in San Mateo County. So you're not surprised how expensive these are, but I want you to know, if you're buying an older home in Burlingame and you're gonna remodel it, if you wanna do a kitchen, for example, that's gonna cost you anywhere from $70,000 to $150,000. Even if you're doing a beautiful IKEA kitchen, which I had a client do at a beautiful Eichler in Burlingame, you just can't get away and do these things for like 30 or 40 grand when you factor in the labor. It's just really expensive. For example, a bathroom, that could be $25,000 to $40,000. A new roof could be $25,000 to $40,000. If you're thinking about adding in air conditioning or a heat pump, that could be $10,000 or $15,000 without touching the ductwork. If you're wanting to do solar, that's also expensive. We have solar at our house, and I'm really thrilled that we do. We have Tesla Powerwalls, but you could easily be spending $25,000, $30,000, sometimes up to $40,000 or $50,000. I had one client who spent $100,000 to put solar on a property in Hillsborough. So these things are expensive, and you absolutely want to take them in consideration, not only just in the purchase price, but also what you could be spending over the life of ownership of the house. Let's say you're totally fine paying the big bucks to buy a really expensive home in Burlingame. You're like, let me write a check. It's actually not even that easy to do that because there's so few homes that pop up for sale. When we look back on 2023, there were only 159 homes that sold last year, which was a historic low for the last couple decades. Typically, we average about 175 to 225 homes that sell per year. When we look back in the last 10 years, there was only 1 year where homes peaked at 250 sales. So basically, it's kind of hard to get what you want in the sense that you just need to be a little bit patient to get what you want. And if that's something that you're open to having a conversation with me about, I'd love to be able to set your expectation on how likely is it to get what you want by really looking at the data rather than me just saying, hey, I'm the expert, here's how it is. No, that's not cool. I want to really be able to sit down with you and share with you and help you feel empowered and educated that you can get exactly what you want in Burlingame. On the positive though, Burlingame is a fantastic place to live. We have a wonderful small town feel that would rival any in the United States. We have tons of green space, so we have parks, we have hiking trails, we have the Bay Trail, you have beautiful views for if you live up in the top of the hill. We have two really vibrant downtown areas, Burlingame Avenue and Broadway. We have fabulous schools. It's just such a really great place to live for all these reasons. Before we continue, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel if you're interested in learning more about what it's like to live here in San Mateo County. I love talking to people like you every day who are thinking about making a move here. My contact info is below. I'd love to chat with you on the phone, or feel free to shoot me an email. So when we think about commuting from Burlingame, it is good and it's not good. It depends how you're commuting. So many of you probably know that commuting in the Bay Area, it's really not that great because there's just so much traffic, and we do have that here in Burlingame too. So if you're hopping up to go to the city, Burlingame is really ideal if you're driving up 101. And you can also easily take Caltrain from downtown Burlingame, or you can take Caltrain from the Millbrae, BART, and Caltrain station. But if you work down the valley, if you're doing that drive during rush hour, that is super miserable, and it's not something that you want to aspire to do. So if you can hop on Caltrain, that's super nice because you can hop on the Baby Bullet train, which doesn't necessarily stop here, but it does stop in Millbrae and in San Mateo. So depending on where you live in Burlingame, you might hear some noise. Now, we all like to think that Burlingame is the oasis of calm and relaxation, and yes, it is. However, if you live within a couple blocks of the 101 freeway, you could hear someone revving their motorcycle. If you live within a couple blocks of El Camino, more like a block, you're likely to hear some road noise during peak times. Or if you live within several blocks of the either Caltrain station in downtown or in Broadway, you can hear the horn. I grew up near the fire station on California Drive, and I could hear the Caltrain, when I kind of got used to it, but I know many people wouldn't want that. And if you live in a newer house with dual pane windows and insulation, it's probably gonna be a non-issue because the first home that we bought was single pane windows and no insulation, and we could hear the airplanes, but then after we did a remodel, it went away. So not a big deal, but just something to keep in mind. Now, many local companies have tech shuttles. That's not unique to Burlingame, but where they'll come, they'll pick you up at a certain spot, and then they'll drive you to the office, and you can work while you're commuting. The other thing is San Francisco is not that far away, so going from Burlingame to the financial district, for example, with no traffic, that's about 25 minutes. With traffic, it could be 45 minutes. But if you were to live in San Mateo, closer to 92, or Belmont, that would kind of be a non-starter for commuting up to the city, which I would not be excited about. So Burlingame really kind of is nice and in between there. Lastly, I'll just mention that because we're so close to San Francisco International Airport, SFO, which is a huge positive in my opinion, when it does rain, the airplanes take off and they kind of go over Burlingame and Hillsborough. So even if you have a $5 or $10 million house, you're still gonna hear the airplanes. But it's not year round, it's just when there's heavy rains. And I should mention on the positive, because we're so close to SFO, it's only one freeway exit, so you can take an Uber or Lyft for like $25 or $30 and you're there. So that's a huge strength. So the weather in Burlingame is fantastic year round. However, I don't know if it's the best on the whole peninsula. Basically, starting north, like South San Francisco, Daly City, northern part of San Bruno, it's a little bit chillier. And then as you move south, so go Burlingame to San Mateo, down through Redwood City, Palo Alto, San Jose, if it's like 72 degrees here, in Palo Alto it might be high 70s, low 80s, San Jose could be mid 80s to 90 degrees, and then out in the East Bay, that could be 90 degrees. So we have all these different microclimates here in the peninsula. In the afternoon, the winds tend to pick up in Burlingame, which is fine. It's not a huge deal, but just something to be aware of, where in other parts of the peninsula, maybe you have a little bit less wind. So parking in downtown Burlingame, as you can probably imagine, it's not like San Francisco, okay? But if you've lived here for a while, you might complain a little bit. Like 10, 15 years ago, maybe you'd have to spend a minute or there'd be a parking spot right away. Now, if you're like on the weekend or peak times, you're gonna have to spend 4 or 5 minutes. So this is a first world issue. It's not a big deal. It's not like San Francisco where you get stressed, you throw 40 bucks at it and you're in the valet parking. Here, though, you could have to spend a few minutes. We do have a parking garage that opened about a year ago, the Highland Garage, which has several hundred spots. It's $3 for all day parking, which is not unreasonable. So again, is that a negative about Burlingame? It's not unique to Burlingame. San Mateo is similar. San Carlos, I should mention, is the only town on the peninsula that doesn't have metered parking downtown. San Carlos is very similar to Burlingame, and it's a great spot as well. So one limiting thing in Burlingame from a school perspective is we have one public middle school, BIS, and we have one public high school, Burlingame High School. So if you live in Burlingame, those are schools that you're going to go to regardless of where you live. Now, it's not necessarily a negative. However, if you're looking for choice, we just don't have that in Burlingame, whereas in San Mateo, where we have 3 times the population, 100,000 people in San Mateo, 30,000 in Burlingame. In San Mateo, you have 3 public high schools to choose from: Aragon, San Mateo, and Hillsdale. So in Burlingame, we have a little bit less. But all these schools are great. I went to BIS, I went to BHS. However, it's just something to think about on a serious note, that it's not, it's a melting pot. Everyone kind of comes into the same spot. There are some private school options in Burlingame, but it's not as much of a robust ecosystem for private options as there are in San Francisco. However, the private school options that we have are still really, really good. So you probably already know, if you're looking for the nightlife scene, you do not want to be in Burlingame late at night. You probably want to be in San Francisco, but there are some really good options for nightlife. There's Velvet 48, there's Barrel House, which are wine bars. We also have Behan's on Broadway, which has been around forever and is very popular. So there are things that you can do, and most restaurants are open till easily 9 or 10 at night. Many people who move to Burlingame, they're not looking for that type of scene. They're looking to be a little bit more relaxed and slower pace of life and just not be out late. So that's just kind of what the culture is like in Burlingame. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. Feel free to check out my video on reasons why Burlingame is super awesome, or check out any of my walking tours about downtown Burlingame, Washington Park, and our new community center. If there's anything I can do to support you in your home buying process, or you just want to learn more, drop me a note. Thanks.